Good morning, everyone. If you're just joining us, I want to welcome you to the INMM ESARDA annual meeting. Earlier today, Susan Pepper, president of INMM, and Julie Udu, president of the European Safeguards Research and Development Association, opened the meeting with welcoming remarks, and Raphael Grosset, Director-General of the IAEA, gave a very interesting keynote address. For those of you that missed the keynote, these sessions will be recorded and available on the VFAIRS platform in 48 hours. Following this session, the INMM will hold its annual awards and recognition ceremony, so please stay tuned in after our plenary sessions. So to kick this off, I would like to introduce our moderators for this session. Willem Janssens is the head of Department for the Nuclear Security and Safeguards at the European Commission Joint Research Center. My name is Deb Gracio, and I'm the Associate Laboratory Director at the Department of Energy's Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. Today, it is my honor and pleasure to introduce Ms. Hruby. Ms. Hruby was sworn in as the Undersecretary for Nuclear Security at the U.S. Department of Energy and Administrator of the National Nuclear Security Administration on July 26th of this year. Prior to her nomination, she served as Director for Sandia National Laboratories and the inaugural Sam Nunn Distinguished Fellow at the Nuclear Threat Initiative. She has been a member of the Defense Science Board, the National Nuclear Security Administration Defense Programs Advisory Committee, and the National Academy of Science Committee for International Security and Arms Control. She is also the recipient of the Department of Energy's Secretary's Exceptional Service Award, the National Nuclear Security Administration's Distinguished Service Gold Award, and the Office of the Secretary of Defense Medal for Exceptional Public Service. Ms. Hruby holds a bachelor's degree from Purdue University and a master's degree from the University of California at Berkeley, both in mechanical engineering. She has authored numerous publications, holds 3 patents, and has received an R&D 100 award. It is my pleasure and honor to welcome the Administrator Hruby to the stage.
Thank you, Deb, for that kind introduction. And thanks to Susan and Julie for inviting me to speak at your event today. Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. It's nice to see so many familiar names virtually attending this first joint annual meeting between INMM and ESARDA. Of course, it's a great pleasure of mine to be back at INMM addressing topics I feel are of great importance for building a better and healthier future for our planet and all of its inhabitants. Today, I'd like to start by describing the geopolitical landscape and the Biden administration initiatives to address today's realities. I will then provide an overview of NNSA's nuclear nonproliferation program and some future challenges that I hope we can work on together. Before I begin, I do want to state that without the collaborative, important work being done by great partner institutions like INMM and ESARDA and IAEA, meeting our mission for NNSA and for a safer and more secure world would be challenging, to say the least. I can't overstate how important the sharing of new technical ideas and best practices, along with establishing a network of experts, is to international progress in this area. The dedication of all these institutions to advance research, development, and effective field implementation of nuclear safeguards and security has and deserves the Department of Energy's utmost appreciation. I'm particularly excited about the theme of this year's meeting, Advancing Together, Innovation and Resilience in Nuclear Materials Management, as it strongly coincides with the innovate, collaborate, and deliver approach we are taking at NNSA to successfully accomplish our nuclear security missions. I know this community especially understands and appreciates the value of those 3 words. Our combined experiences in the world of nuclear materials management have told us time and time again that without innovation, collaboration, and delivery, we can't accomplish what we've set out to seek, enhancing global security. At the Department of Energy, one of our top priorities, yes. I'm sorry, is there? Okay, so I'm understanding there's concern about not being able to see me and I'm getting interrupted. So hopefully Hopefully we can fix that. I'm going to continue. So let me let me go back to talking about the priorities of the Biden administration. At the Department of Energy, one of our top priorities is to lay the groundwork for our country to achieve President Biden's goal of net zero carbon emissions by 2050 by advancing cutting edge clean energy technologies and building an equitable energy future. Climate change goes beyond the United States. It affects us all. It has gone from being a single issue concerning our environment to now affecting the advancement of societies and the survival of people around the world. I strongly believe that the way to effectively combat climate change requires global adoption of innovative nuclear science and technology, which can't happen without us increasing nuclear safeguards and security. And that's where the work of the Department of Energy and NNSA comes. Let me start by framing the challenges and opportunities I see. First, there continues to be a significant evolution of the nuclear landscape that demands our attention and response. Over the past decade, the geopolitics have changed considerably. From a world where a limited number of states with nuclear weapons were committed to decreasing the size of their weapons stockpile and cooperating to secure nuclear materials to help thwart nuclear terrorism. Today's world involves more states that have or desire to have nuclear weapons, increasing stockpile sizes and variety of weapons, and less cooperation and less trust among the players. At the same time, there is resurgent interest in nuclear energy production as a clean energy solution to help slow the pace of climate change. This is a complex environment requiring new solutions. However, the good news is we still have the same common long-standing goals to achieve: providing effective nuclear materials safeguards and security, to protect our citizens from incidents or accidents while allowing the development of nuclear energy and peaceful uses. It's my sincere hope we will embark on a time of opportunity for new ideas for nuclear materials, security and safeguards, and for new levels of international cooperation, and not retreat to our corners and dangerously compete with one another. President Biden's interim national security guidance includes a commitment to continue efforts to secure fissile materials and radioactive materials worldwide. The administration has given focused thought to how to evolve the work from the nuclear security summits to better reflect today's environments. And I think we can expect to hear new initiatives in this area that are visionary, but are risk-based and realistic. The president has also committed to decreasing the reliance on nuclear weapons, to restarting strategic stability dialogues with Russia, and to maintaining safe, secure, and effective nuclear weapons as long as they exist. Finally, the president is wholeheartedly committed to clean energy and climate action, understands nuclear energy can and must be part of the solution. As a statement of the importance of nuclear security, the president's fiscal year 2022 budget request for NNSA increases over the 2021 enacted level. Let me shift to describing the NNSA activities in nuclear security and nonproliferation. Throughout the rest of this meeting, you'll hear much more from NNSA and the U.S. National Laboratories staff about the details of their work. I hope to paint a top-level picture of priorities for you before those talks and others begin. The NNSA has three primary efforts in nuclear nonproliferation: securing materials domestically and around the world, minimizing and managing any necessary materials, including replacing nuclear and radiological materials with viable alternatives whenever feasible. And third, supporting nuclear nonproliferation and arms control monitoring and verification. In addition, we have a sustained research and development program that provides space-based sensors to monitor nuclear activities, and the research and development program also supports our other three primary missions. Our R&D program sustains expertise in our labs, our DOE labs and universities, including both people and experimental facilities, and more recently, the establishment of test beds to develop ideas and to get ahead of emerging threats. So let's dive a little deeper into our efforts to secure nuclear and radiological materials. The objective of this program is to make it very hard for anyone to steal or acquire nuclear or radiological material, and if they are successful, to make sure we interdict them or interdict the material. That is why domestically, NNSA helps private sector partners secure and, where possible, eliminate radioactive materials. We also partner worldwide to secure nuclear and radioactive materials and to detect and deter trafficking of this material. Our efforts to secure materials encompasses not only weapons, usable materials, but also nuclear power plant and fuel cycle facilities, research reactors, and materials in transit. Globally, NNSA has collaborated with international partners to improve physical security at 10 facilities housing nuclear materials over the past 6 years. We also work with government, law enforcement, and business across the globe to protect radioactive sources used for medical research and commercial purposes. Finally, we attempt to deter or detect nuclear material smuggling across borders by strengthening capabilities to detect, disrupt, and investigate any attempts, and providing the expertise and tools needed to respond if smuggling is detected. However, we don't stop at just securing materials. We have an interest in minimizing and managing nuclear and radiological materials through 3 pillars of effort: material conversion, material removal, and material disposal. The highest leverage step to minimizing the use of weapons usable nuclear material is to eliminate the need for the material while still accomplishing the peaceful objectives. NNSA accomplishes this through the CONVERT program, working primarily at civil research reactors and medical isotope production facilities in the United States and around the world. In addition, facilities that use weapons usable materials cooperate with NNSA and experts from our national laboratories to convert their highly enriched uranium, HEU fuel, and targets to low enriched uranium, LEU, a material that cannot be used in a nuclear weapon. NNSA is also working to develop and qualify new LEU fuels for their specialized reactors that cannot provide the same performance with the existing LEU fuels. Many of us here today know that nuclear power holds the key to clean energy solutions to fight climate change effectively. Advancing nuclear reactor concepts and designs offer optionality and flexibility, as well as non-electric applications. These innovative technologies have promising use as batteries for remote locations or off-grid applications, industrial and chemical processes, hydrogen and isotope production, and desalination. Advanced reactors also have the potential to produce more energy with less waste and support many applications beyond electricity generation, essentially responding to the various needs of many nations. Which is why NNSA is standing up a new program to work on new reactor designs, including small modular reactors, to help improve proliferation resistance in facilities around the world. As part of minimizing the amount of highly enriched uranium, NNSA also manages the molybdenum-99 program. Moly-99 is an isotope that is used in over 40,000 medical procedures in the United States each day. The decay product of Moly-99, technetium-99M, is the most commonly used radioisotope relied upon for performing heart stress tests, identifying cancer in the body, and studying organ structure and function. The Moly-99 program assists global Moly-99 production facilities in converting to non-HEU processes and supports the establishment of domestic supplies of Moly-99 without the use of HEU. NNSA has already eliminated the need for weapons use and materials at over 100 civilian sites. The second pillar of the material minimization and management effort is to remove any excess material or unsecured material by collaborating with partner nations and international institutions to identify excess nuclear material and implement permanent solutions to consolidate, remove, and/or dispose of these inventories. NNSA has removed over 7,730 kilograms of HEU and plutonium from almost 50 countries, enough material for more than 300 nuclear weapons. We also maintain the capability to carry out expedited nuclear material removals should the need arise. The third pillar of materials minimization and management is material disposition. This effort aims to dispose of surplus or excess HEU and weapon-grade plutonium in the United States, as well as select material returned to the United States under the REMOVE program. The U.S. HEU disposition program aims to eliminate 187 metric tons of HEU. To date, NNSA has downblended approximately 164 metric tons. The NNSA approach involves downblending HEU with natural uranium to make LEU that can be used as a research reactor fuel or as an isotope production target. By making LEU available for a wide variety of uses, the dispose effort closes the material management cycle. In addition to the need to dispose of surplus HEU, NNSA also needs to dispose of 34 metric tons of surplus plutonium. To do this, NNSA will use a dilute and dispose strategy with plutonium downblended to less than 10 weight percent with an adulterant mixture, placed in a robust container to reduce worker exposure, and packaged in a criticality controlled overpack for transport and final disposition. The downblended material is carefully characterized to ensure compliance with the waste isolation pilot plant waste acceptance criteria and shipped to the underground repository for final emplacement 2,150 feet underground. Okay, let's transition to discuss the NNSA's nonproliferation and arms control effort. This program aims to strengthen nonproliferation and arms control monitoring and verification regimes to prevent proliferation, ensure peaceful nuclear uses, and enable nuclear reductions. The elements of the NNSA nonproliferation and arms control program are, first, to support the capacity and capability of the IAEA and partner countries to implement international safeguard obligations and to detect and deter diversion of nuclear material or illicit use of nuclear facilities. The second, to build domestic international capacity to implement export control obligations and to control illicit trafficking of nuclear and WMD related material and technology. Third, to support negotiation and implementation of agreements and associated monitoring regimes to verifiably reduce nuclear weapons and nuclear programs. In addition, we develop strategies and technologies to address emerging nonproliferation and arms control challenges and opportunities. With respect to IAEA capacity and capability, sorry, I messed up. NNSA has developed and provides over a dozen training classes every year to the IAEA's Department of Safeguards on a wide variety of topics, including fuel cycle technologies, computer security, nuclear material accounting and control, physical protection, and insider threat mitigation. As a result of COVID, we have successfully transitioned to virtual training for many of these courses. I would just say I think this will help us enormously in the years ahead to train more people by allowing remote learning. Since 2020, we've conducted more than 70 virtual training and capacity building events attended by more than 2,500 participants. The United States is committed to developing and maturing technology to help IAEA efficiently and effectively accomplish their mission. Over the last several years, NNSA has transferred over 20 innovative safeguard tools and methodologies to the IAEA to strengthen the international nuclear safeguards regime and the IAEA's ability to verify peaceful uses of nuclear materials and facilities and to detect non-compliance. Part of the non-proliferation program is to manage export controls. NNSA strengthens the US government's ability to prevent and interdict exports that would contribute to foreign WMD programs of concern, strengthen foreign partner national systems of export control, and strengthen multilateral export control regimes. Further, NNSA is part of the US government's interagency licensing review process to ensure that each year, thousands of proposed exports of sensitive items or technology receive the appropriate level of scrutiny before being transferred. The NNSA role is critical since many items are dual use in nature with legitimate civil and military applications. Recognizing the important uses of items in clean energy, modern medicine, advanced imaging techniques, sterilized equipment, and other applications is important for the export regime to balance security and peaceful uses. NNSA strengthens the capacity of the US government agencies to prevent and interdict US origin exports by providing customized WMD commodity identifications training to targeting and inspection specialists, enforcement, and investigative agencies. NNSA also engages foreign partners to strengthen their national export control systems to prevent illicit trafficking in nuclear and dual-use items through customized export licensing, enterprise outreach, and enforcement training programs, with the goal of developing a cadre of export control experts to provide training through bilateral and international partnerships. Finally, developing and maintaining the technical means to monitor the terms of a nuclear arms control treaty or other international agreement is a critical factor in ensuring both successful negotiation and successful agreement. This is an exciting area with the rapid advance of new commercial satellite open source data, open source data, and artificial intelligence. It's my hope that we can establish international cooperation that will support the establishment of fulsome verification regime and treaty and agreements beyond what we have negotiated to date. Lastly, let me briefly talk about NNSA's research portfolio. NNSA advances its nuclear threat reduction mission by developing ways to detect and monitor foreign nuclear fuel cycle and weapons development activities, special nuclear material movement or diversion, and nuclear explosions. These same capabilities support nuclear arms control treaty monitoring and verification, operational interdiction, and other nuclear security efforts across NNSA and the US government. This includes delivering space-based sensors to meet the nation's operational nuclear test treaty monitoring obligations, as well as its need to warn and give assessment of air, missile, and space threats. It also includes improving the speed, accuracy, confidence, and specificity of nuclear forensics, analytical capabilities related to nuclear detonations. Using the unique facilities and scientific skills of NNSA and Department of Energy National Laboratories, and in partnership with industry and academia, R&D efforts provide the technical base for national and homeland security agencies to meet their non-proliferation, counter-proliferation, and counterterrorism responsibilities. Emerging technologies such as additive manufacturing, unmanned aerial systems, advanced nuclear reactors, high-power computing, and artificial intelligence provide opportunities to enhance nuclear threat reduction by harnessing capabilities to detect nuclear proliferation. At the same time, however, these technologies also introduce new risks, including lowering the barrier to proliferation. Therefore, global nonproliferation and counterproliferation efforts must innovate to keep pace with technology development and address evolving threats. As part of our efforts to develop the next generation of nuclear fuel cycle and material monitoring capabilities, NNSA's Office of Defense Nuclear Nonproliferation has created a field demonstration program that integrates research and experimental testbed activities to advance technology in support of the nation's treaty verification and monitoring needs. We hope to expand this to include international partners in the future. In summary, although nuclear security is a U.S. government-wide effort, the technical base of safeguards and nuclear security support relies on the DOE, NNSA, and our national laboratory partners. This vital mission is a source of great pride to me and my colleagues, and I'm looking forward to participating in the IAEA 65th General Conference next month to support the building of stronger cooperation. The INMM and the nuclear materials management community are also integral to ensuring the highest nuclear safeguard, safety, and security standards are met. I am proud that the NNSA actively organizes and leads sessions, and that the NNSA staff members hold leadership positions in regional chapters that foster advanced nuclear materials management, promote research, and establish standards to and improve the qualifications of those employed in this field. And NNSA regularly participates as presenters in domestic and international INMM and ESARDA technical workshops that cultivate innovative thinking in the field of nuclear materials stewardship. NNSA is proud of its accomplishments, but we recognize there's still so much work to be done globally to minimize and secure vulnerable and excess radioactive and nuclear materials. As INMM works to broaden its geographic diversity, attracting and supporting more participants from underrepresented regions such as Africa and Asia, NNSA will broaden its support as well. I want to conclude with a few remarks about the future, highlighting three areas: nuclear energy, international cooperation, and next generation experts. I think the world needs nuclear energy as a safe, secure, reliable, and clean base power capability. For this to be successful, new, innovative, cost-effective approaches are needed, including more inherently safe and secure reactors, potentially new fuels with less proliferation concern, new remote safeguard and improved security options, and more mature spent fuel disposition options. Additionally, I think collaborations with our international partners is our best hope to accelerate this change. Implementing more nuclear power and supporting sophisticated life-saving nuclear applications while reducing the threat of nuclear proliferation and nuclear terrorism requires international cooperation. I hope NNSA can continue to increase partnerships even beyond the 100 agencies and more than 70 countries we have today. The depth and focus of cooperation should continue to evolve. That is why now, more than before, our ability to train, recruit, and retain the next generation of nuclear safeguards and security professionals is vital to our nonproliferation mission and to our nuclear materials management efforts to help unlock their potential impact on agriculture, health, and economic development worldwide. NNSA is strongly committed to advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion in our workforce, and we pursue an aggressive hiring strategy with the goal of adding an estimated 4,000 to 6,000 employees annually across the nuclear security enterprise. We have engaged over 250 undergraduate and 500 graduate students through the University Consortia for Nuclear Nonproliferation as part of our efforts to develop America's intellectual capital and support nuclear security and safeguards research and development. These consortia link universities and DOE national laboratories to address basic research shortfalls in nuclear nonproliferation and security and treaty compliance monitoring. We also engage with INMM student chapters to help students with an interest in the nuclear security enterprise participate in a wide variety of nuclear management and safeguards activity through education and development of professional ethics. While we have seen success in our recruiting efforts, we look forward to partnering with INMM and ESARDA on this topic, but specifically, as we emerge from the COVID-19 pandemic, your support for both STEM and foreign policy educational programs are very important to developing and training the next generation of diverse nuclear security experts. INMM has been a leader in this field for over 6 decades, and I know from personal experience what amazing work you do in this area. I also know that your members are some of the best and brightest in the field of nuclear materials management, talented minds who can help NNSA deliver on its non-proliferation mission. So I encourage those of you interested in exploring a career with us to visit our website at energy.gov/NNSA and click on the careers tab. And finally, in the coming days, you will engage in discussions about pressing nuclear security issues such as artificial intelligence, nuclear forensics, countering unmanned aerial systems, cyber threats, and emerging threats and technologies, among many other important topics. NNSA values these discussions as they provide a collaborative platform for the nuclear materials management community to share technical challenges and accomplishments with everyone and learn about NNSA and our international partners' recent achievements to enhance global security. This joint meeting, much like our work, is about innovating and collaborating so we can set the conditions today for the successful management of nuclear materials for a better future, and in doing so, deliver on nuclear power's potential as a source for clean energy. To quote Secretary Granholm, all of you can help drive nuclear energy innovation forward. Whether you want to learn more about how you can contribute to this work, or if you have questions, or if you have suggestions, let's talk, because the only way we're going to seize this massive opportunity to finally get our arms around climate crisis, the only way it's going to happen is if we work together. Thank you again for allowing me the opportunity to speak with you about these themes that are important to me and important to NNSA. Please continue to stay safe and healthy, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Hruby, for those insightful remarks. Innovate, collaborate, and deliver impactful outcomes which will result from this approach. We appreciate your time today. We have time for a few questions which are being collected through the Zoom chat. While Willem is collecting your questions submitted into the chat, please allow me to kick off with the first question. A new nuclear posture review is underway, as you know. Do you anticipate substantial changes from the NPR of 2018 or more of a refinement on existing directions?
You know, that's a good question. We are at the early stages of the nuclear posture review in the United States, although the administration has set an aggressive timeline to try to complete it by early next calendar year. We have a lot of policy issues to discuss and a lot of nuclear posture issues to discuss. One thing that's very clear is that no matter what is decided in the NPR, that there's going to be a lot of work to do in continuing to modernize our nuclear weapons stockpile in the United States, and modernize in particular our infrastructure, our nuclear infrastructure in the United States, as well as maintain a very robust science program so that we can certify the stockpile without nuclear testing. So I kind of expect it to be more of an evolution, but honestly, it's really too early to tell.
Wonderful, thank you. Willem, a question?
Yes, good morning, Mrs. Hruby. So from the chat, we had the question from our colleague Don Kovacic, which asked whether you could discuss a little bit more in detail how NNSA is cooperating with DOE, which has the mission of supporting the design and deployment of US advanced nuclear reactors to address the world's zero carbon energy needs. So specifically, how is NNSA helping the DOE consider nuclear security and safeguards issues to support the successful deployment of this important technology?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is still in the early days of trying to establish a much tighter partnership within DOE between the Office of Nuclear Energy and the NNSA. We hope to have a new initiative in this area where we do everything from providing materials for testing of advanced reactors to evaluating inherent safeguards and security. I don't know. I don't know if there are any talks on this in the program this year, but expect to see some next year because this is an area where we're really going to try to pick up our activity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. If I may, a question from myself. I was listening carefully to your emphasis on the international collaboration. And then at one point in time, you mentioned, for instance, engagement with the African Union or on the African continent. So the question is mainly whether you could highlight a little bit what are your priorities in terms of the safeguards outreach from the NNSA. So what are the topics that you priority want to deal with in the near future, and which regions do you have in focus, if any, in particular? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not in a position to talk specifically about what regions. Of course, we've had a partnership with South Africa and other countries in Africa, but we will stick with a risk-based approach to where we believe either eliminating materials or substituting materials make the most sense and has the biggest impact. So we'll continue to evaluate against the criteria of risk and of course countries that are willing to partner, and we'll take that partnership and cooperation seriously.
Okay, thank you. Then back to Deb.
Thank you. So Ms. Hruby, you talked a little bit about recruiting, developing, and retaining a specialized workforce needed for NNSA's mission and ongoing challenge. Can you share some examples of innovative and effective approaches already underway within the complex? And how do the non-NNSA laboratories factor into your vision of the future for the workforce?
Yeah, great. Thanks for that. It's really critical that we develop and recruit across a much wider variety in schools that we have. We have a lot of work to do, especially in minority serving institution partnerships. And we hope through our university partnerships and graduate fellow programs to recruit from a broader number of schools and different students than we have in the past. But of course, we still, our objective is to still get the very best people to do this work in the United States. And so I do think, I know, Deb, you know better than I do, but I know that all of the DOE labs have been needing to do very active recruiting, partly because of the demographics of our laboratories when they were established. We're sort of on a generational cycle. Partly because it's getting increasingly difficult to retain employees in the United States. Just it's a different environment for people coming into the workforce, and especially in the technologies that we care about expanding, like artificial intelligence. So in the NNSA, we're trying to do some joint recruiting. I think, not all joint recruiting, but some joint recruiting at job fairs, so that it makes it easier to hold more of those per year and to find the very best fit for people who are interested in jobs. And perhaps it makes sense to include the laboratories outside of the NNSA laboratories in some of those events as well. of course, we rely on all the laboratories to deliver on the nuclear nonproliferation mission, and there's some footprints that are pretty large. So we're looking for creative ideas from the labs themselves, and then how we can do things together with the right balance to generate the next generation workforce that is the best it can be to tackle these hard problems.
Thank you. I'd love to have a follow-on conversation. That great answer. I think there's a lot of work for all of the labs and the administration to do in recruiting and retaining, and especially in these new technology areas. Thank you. I think our last question, Willem, you have it?
Yeah, there is another question, Ms. Hruby, which came in from the chat and which I think is going to interest many colleagues, which approach this problem mainly from the technical area possibly. But the question, in fact, asks, what is your view on the role of behavioral science in mitigating the threats associated with the NNSA mission? Thank you.
That's a great question. Yeah, it's to be honest, I haven't given a lot of thought to this, how behavioral science will fit in. I do think, though, that we've had a lot of emphasis in nuclear security and insider threat and other things like that, but perhaps we really need to think more broadly about the fields of science. We've expanded, I would say that, we started with, physics and engineering. We've expanded a lot into biology and material science and other things, but maybe it's time for behavioral science. We certainly have lots of, in the international cooperation regime, I think behavioral science would be a super interesting topic.
Thank you. Over to Deb again.
Thanks, Willem. I was wrong. We actually have a few more minutes. So one last question here. What is your current thinking on how to re-engage with Russia in new and meaningful arms control agreements? And do you see any type of joint technology development efforts across the US labs?
Well, let me just say this is a passion of mine, and maybe the person who asked the question knows that. So while between my time at Sandia as a Sandia lab director and my time starting this job about a month ago, I spent a great deal of my time working with the National Academies of Science and others in track 2 dialogues with Russia and other countries. And I have a very strong interest in restarting collaboration with Russia on science and technology issues, and particularly technologies that might apply to monitoring and verification. It takes a long time to develop new monitoring and verification technologies that both sides are comfortable with. And while we've continued to develop those independently or individually, I think it's time to start again. I know there are loads of international barriers to this, but I feel strongly that we will be much better prepared for a much better treaty or agreement on strategic stability with Russia and other countries if we start working together now on technologies that could help in the monitoring and verification regime. So you can count on me to be an advocate of that, and we'll see who's interested, willing in the U.S. government and the Russian Federation government and others.
Thank you. So we're almost near the end. Do you have any closing comments before I close us out?
No, I just want to wish everyone a very productive and as fun as it can be virtual meeting. I'm so glad that you continue to hold this event, even with all the barriers that we have. And I just hope that we can all get vaccinated, stay safe, and be in person sometime in the future. So Thanks again for inviting me to speak, and I wish you I wish a good meeting and a really productive year ahead between now and next year's meeting, and looking forward to seeing your great work.
Thank you, Ms. Hruby, for your comments and taking time to answer some of our questions. Speaking on behalf of my colleagues and Willem and I, we're grateful for your insights and your leadership to the NNSA. Thank you for joining us today. I'll now turn the mic over to Willem to introduce our next speaker. Willem?
Okay, thank you, Deb. Thank you, Mrs. Hruby, for the very interesting talk. And it's my pleasure to introduce the next speaker in this plenary session, which is Dr. Massimo Garribba. Massimo is the Deputy Director-General at the European Commission Directorate-General for Energy, and he's responsible for the Euratom policy coordination. That the Director-General basically provides overall guidance, coordination, and supervision of the activities in the areas of nuclear safety, radiation protection, spent fuel and radioactive waste management, as well as on nuclear safeguards, inspections, and verification activities. In his previous function as Director for Nuclear Energy for Safety and the ITER project, in fact, Massimo also had to deal with the EU contribution to the international fusion projects, to issues like the basic safety standards, the management of spent fuel and radioactive waste, the follow-up to EU nuclear safety stress tests, the assistance programs in the area of nuclear decommissioning, for instance, in Bulgaria, Lithuania, and Slovakia, and also radiological emergency preparedness and response. Before that, in fact, I also like to mention that Massimo was head of the Euratom Coordination International Relations Unit in the same Director-General, where he was in fact especially responsible for the post-Fukushima nuclear stress test dossier, which many of you have heard about. Massimo has his Master of Science in Electronic Engineering from the Padova University in Italy, and the PhD in Informatics and Industrial Electronics from the same university also in Italy. And with that, I look forward to your speech, Massimo. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Willem. I will try to share my screen. Let's see if I'm able to do that. Can you see my slides?
They are arriving, not yet, but it's coming. I'll tell you, now they are there, yes.
Okay, very good. So thank you very much for your kind introduction, Willem, and thank you everybody for having me speaking at this conference. I will try to say a few words about the EU energy policy and where we are moving, how nuclear energy fits into this, and then I will spend a few words about nuclear safeguards topics and in which direction we are moving. So first of all, I think that you all know that one of the flagship policy of the European Commission headed by Ursula von der Leyen from till 2024 is to put in place a European Green Deal and bring Europe to be the first climate neutral continent by the year 2050. Now, to do this, of course, implies a very strong effort as far as energy policy is concerned. But energy policy is not alone in the world, let me say. It is strongly linked and connected with a number of other key priorities of this Commission. And in particular, let me mention two. One, which is the link to the creation of a single digital market, which contributes to more efficient use of energy on the one hand, but also that expands in many other areas of society in providing securities, cyber security, safety, but also ethical standards, etc. And third, of course, the link to ensuring energy supply is linked to the overall geopolitical situation and the way that we see our European way of life. But if we concentrate on energy policy, energy, as you all know, is responsible for in excess of 70–75% of all CO2 emission between production and use. And so it has to be tackled through a different number of policies and issues by reducing the use, so through energy efficiency, in industry, in the private use, through at the same time ensuring energy security, so ensuring that we can access and produce the energy that we need at all time, pushing the production of renewable energies that are also seen as local sources of energies where they are produced, and therefore specifically in the case of Europe, this is surely not the case of the US, but specifically in the case of Europe, reducing the energy import bill that Europe faces every year. And then the policy extends to the use of energy by including issues like building and renovating the premises where we live, which are in fact one of the most energy-rich sources of the use of energy itself. So if you look at what happened very recently, on the 14th of July, the Commission published the so-called Fit for 55 package, which consists in a set of interconnected proposals that tend to strive to strike a careful balance between pricing, targets, standards, and support measures. So Fit for 55 means that by 2030, Europe has the ambition to reduce by 55% its emission with respect to the 1990 levels. Now, indeed, when you want to do that, you have to think that you have to change completely your way of life. You have to change the way in which you see transportation. You have to change the way in which you see what you eat and how you produce what you eat, what sits on your dish every day. So this is indeed a discussion that will now go on with the EU member states for quite some time, in order to transform all these proposals into legislative measures which will be binding for the member states. So when we look at nuclear energy, the question is, so where are we, where were we, and where are we going? So this is a question that we have been looking for a number of years. You know that in Europe we have very different views about the use of nuclear energy. However, I think it is fair to say that it is very widely recognized that nuclear is one of those low carbon energy supply sources that can be usefully used in the energy mix now, in 2050 and beyond. So in all the scenarios that we have looked since 2018, the share of nuclear energy, though decreasing, in absolute terms is considered to be constant throughout the EU. In particular, if you look at the prospects that our member states have, we have 10 member states out of 27 that strongly rely in their plans to 2030 on nuclear power in their energy mix. And as I said, well, we have clearly one issue in the EU, which is not only an EU issue, which is also the age of our installations. Our installations are undergoing reviews, are undergoing safety upgrades for extension of operation, for LTO operation. And it is clear that in the 30s, it will become clear whether there will be a large wave of, or not, of replacement of nuclear plants. Now, the EU role in nuclear energy is regulated by the Euratom Treaty. It's one of the 3 founding treaties of the of what is today the European Union, and is the one that has been least touched in its original structure and implant since 1957. As you can see in the slide, it is a treaty that covers, let me say, all the basics of the utilization, the civil utilization of nuclear energy, ranging from the front end, from the fuel supply policy, and going to the waste management, and through the use of international relations and so on. This treaty is, of course, linked to the other treaty that regulates the use of energy in the EU, which is the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, which in its Article 194 states that member states are free to choose their energy mix. And this is where you know, we have how can I say, we have a certain tension, in the sense that on the one hand there is the freedom to use, on the other hand there are energy policies which are building on the treaty, which push on the use of more renewable energies and push for the CO2 reduction. So in fact, half of the member states today, 13, utilize nuclear energy, and as I said, the 10 of them consider them as a long-term decarbonization source for their energy system, and they consider it as essential for their security of electricity supply. On the Commission side, our point of view is also very clear. We want that member states that do decide to use nuclear energy, and that, as I said, are free to do so, do that under the best condition of safety, radiation protection, and safeguards and non-proliferation. So let me spend a few words on the legal framework for nuclear safety, radiation protection, and non-power applications. So first of all, the Euratom Treaty, like the IAEA, establishes a basic safety standards that is the basics for the protection of the population and the workers in the nuclear field. We have a directive, a piece of European legislation, which is then transposed into member states legislation, which is periodically reviewed since 1957. The latest one dates back now to 2014, and it is fully being transposed by the EU member states. Second, and this is much more recent, since the year 2009, the Euratom community, the EU, has been legislating on nuclear safety And post-Fukushima, we have established, on the one hand, let me say, practical verification of the safety of the plants in full collaboration with the safety authorities of the member states, and through peer reviews and stress tests that are there. But also we have established binding legislation which establishes a safety objective, namely an objective that aims at eliminating or minimizing the effect, the radiological consequences of any incident or accident that can happen on a nuclear installation. The directive is not limited to nuclear power plants, but includes all facilities in the nuclear fuel cycle. The directive also includes another important point, which I would like to mention here, namely the fact that every 6 years it provides for so-called topical peer reviews that are dedicated to looking in depth at safety issues which are identified collectively by the EU safety authorities. The first one in 2017 was dedicated to the aging of nuclear power plants, and now we are in the preparatory phase of a second one, which is looking at fire risks of nuclear installation. A third point that I would like to mention on these slides is the SAMIR action plan, the strategic agenda for medical ionizing radiation applications. This is something which we have linked to another flagship priority of the Commission, which is the Beating Cancer Action Plan. Basically, this strategic agenda brings together all the measures that start, let me say, from research reactors, safety of radiation equipment, and innovation in medical ionizing radiation applications that before were looked rather separately and let me say with different priority and from different Commission department. The other area where we work, I would say, very closely with the member states, but I think it is a very important area where which is key for the development, further development and use of nuclear energy, is linked to the radioactive waste management on one hand and to the commissioning and waste management on the other end. So on radioactive waste management, we have also a piece of legislation that dates back to 2011 that provides member states with an obligation to define steps that lead to the safe management of all types of spent fuel and radioactive waste in the EU, and this has to be accompanied, of course, by a clear cost assessment and the establishment of financing mechanism. For those of you who are interested, we have reviewed closely the situation last time in 2017-18, and we have published all the data relative to that. As far as the commissioning is concerned, we have something like 90 closed nuclear power plants in the EU, and basically all of those, they have to undergo the commissioning. So the commissioning is clearly one priority that we have, and it is also one economic prospect that we have. It is a market that can experience a large development in the coming years, and where we are trying to pull together. You see on the slide the mentioning of the expert group on the financial aspects of nuclear decommissioning, which brings together all our member states experts in discussing this kind of matters. We also directly finance, following the accession back in 2004 and 2007 of Slovakia, Lithuania, and Bulgaria, the decommissioning of 8 reactors in these countries. And I would particularly highlight the fact that there are still unique technical challenges, like the dismantling of graphite cores of reactor and the managing of the associated graphite waste, which have not been solved to date. So they are a first of a kind, and on which we are not only financing this, but we are trying to establish platforms together, especially with the colleagues of the Joint Research Center, for sharing of knowledge and industrial best practices. Now, if we move to research and innovation, this is clearly one of the key areas where the EU has been continuously attentive, let me say, since the beginning, since 1957. And the Euratom Research and Training Program is now in place. It has a financial envelope of 1.4 billion euro, roughly speaking, for the period 21 to 25. It looks at, on the one hand, the continuous improvement in nuclear safety, waste management, radiation protection, but also supports for advanced nuclear technologies. And if I specifically mention that, there is a strong interest that has, I would say, blossomed in the EU in the past couple of years on the issue of small modular reactors. And we from the Commission have put together an internal workshop on small modular reactors on 29 June last, in order to try and develop a shared European vision on how to develop that. For the benefit of our US friends, let me also say that a couple of years ago, in 2019, in October 2019, we ran also a joint workshop with our US counterparts in the Department on Energy on that. Let me also mention a few words about ITER. I saw that the newspapers were actually filled with fusion news in the past few days. They were actually talking about inertial fusion and not magnetic fusion. The EU has been traditionally supporting magnetic fusion, and in the form of tokamaks and other magnetic confinement type machine. Our biggest contribution goes to the ITER project, where we have a budget of 5.6 billion euro for the next 7 years. ITER is being built in Cadarache, and we see fusion as clearly one of the technologies that beyond 2050 can continue to support the development of a carbon-free energy production in the EU. And as I'm sure you all know, fusion has a number of key characteristics that make it more palatable than fission in terms of, for example, the type of waste that it produces, and so on and so forth. Of course, the scientific and technological feasibility of fusion, or at least of magnetic fusion, is clearly the key step that needs to be overcome with ITER. So let me say now a few words about Euratom safeguards. So the Commission has a duty to ensure that all EU civilian nuclear materials are not diverted from their intended peaceful uses. In such a way, Euratom is part of the non-proliferation regime, and this is why the Commission has a dedicated directorate in DG Energy that verifies on the one hand the accountancy, and then verifies through missions and inspections that nuclear material are used for the way that they are declared. This is done in full collaboration with the IAEA, first of all. We work very closely with DG Grossi and any staff. We are different independent organizations which have different mandates. Euratom has not a mandate for non-proliferation, and we also work under a different legal frameworks. However, we have joint agreements that ensure that that we work together, and it is interesting to see how the articulation between a regional organization and a fully international organization can work together in order to achieve the same aims. Euratom has also bilateral agreements with all major nuclear users or nuclear material producers. You see some flags here in these slides. This is not, let me say, the whole story. In the sense that we have also other agreements, but these I think are our main partners. So of course, Euratom safeguards was challenged and impacted by COVID-19, and it was also impacted by an unprecedented issue that we had to face in the European Union, namely how to handle Brexit. We also look at how to, let me say, move forward in the sense of how to improve and changed update the approach that we have on safeguards. And we have recently prepared a new integrated Euratom Treaty Safeguards approach called ITS2. And in the same way, we are evaluating the main legal instruments under which safeguards in the EU are implemented, the regulation 302/2005, which indeed is 16 years old and needs to be, how can I say, looked at if it needs to be changed or if it is still fit for purpose. And then on the field, optimizing the inspection effort is something that is done, let me say, daily on the preparation stage, on safeguards by design, on improving automation as much as possible, and also in trying to increase the cooperation with operators by sharing the effort, for example, for the ceilings. So if you look at the COVID impact, you can see that this has had a clear impact on our inspection effort, especially in 2020. because of all the different restrictions that we had with our member states. But of course, we have worked with them to try and make as many exceptions possible for the inspections effort. So we have clearly managed that, because we have maintained the critical inspections, and we have maintained basically unchanged the level of materials that we have been able to keep under safeguards in the EU. Next, Brexit. We have negotiated a agreement with the UK. It's a different agreement from, let me say, the general cooperation agreement that has been done by the Commission following Brexit. It was very important because the UK was, let me say, the second biggest client in terms of safeguards from in the EU for the European Commission and our inspection efforts. And you can see that we needed to ensure that we had how can I say, a clean transition from the Euratom regime to the UK safeguards regime that now it's in place. So we have stopped our efforts in the UK at the end of the transition period that ended on the 31st of December of last year in 2020. As I said, moving forward, we have looked to improve the way that internal safeguards are implemented. The previous approach dates back to 2004. So again, it was time to have an internal reflection on that. And we looked in particular at three areas. The first one is to clarify the Euratom safeguards governance process. How does the Commission meets its treaty obligation in terms of safeguards? Second, strengthen transparency on how we do things and improve the risk orientation of how Euratom safeguards are carried out, moving from, let me say, a black and white approach to a more confidence and risk informed approach. And then also to adjust the safeguards to cover different types of installations that are coming to the landscape. Just to mention one, the encapsulation plant in Finland is coming online soon, and this is a first of a kind indeed that will need to be treated in terms of safeguards. And of course, now we will discuss implications of the approach also with our member states. Now, last but not least, what I mentioned before is the evaluation of the legal basis. So, is it effective and efficient what we do? Is it relevant to the recent development in safeguards? Is it coherent with international agreements and international developments? And does it enable us to fulfill our legal obligation as European Commission? So this has just started. It is something that consultation will be has been sent, sorry, on the 6th of August, and we will start gathering results at the end of October and move forward from there. In terms of inspection, we are consistently engaged with stakeholders on the issue of safeguards by design. the integration of safeguards measures in the design of plants is of course something that facilitates the carrying out of safeguards afterwards, but also has inherent benefits for the users because it lowers costs and facilitates operation once in place. And you can see that a number of member states are fully engaged in that. Likewise, the reduction and the optimization of inspection efforts is possible through acquisition of operators' data remotely. This is something that we do more and more, and also this results in a reduction of intrusiveness in the facilities of operation and operators' resource saving. So I think it is again moves in the direction of having a win-win type of situation. And likewise, as I said, operator ceiling is also something that can reduce burdens for both the operators and the verificators. It is a program which is in place in 3 member states, in Bulgaria, in Lithuania, and in Germany. And it gives the possibility, as I said, to minimize intrusion. So with this, I think I will conclude by saying that we will continue to play a leading role in further developing and implementing the Euratom safeguards in new types of installations, and that we will continue to engage on the safeguards networks as it allows the continued dialogue with stakeholders, to include as much as needed research and development, stimulate synergies, and increase understanding of safeguards. And with this, I would like to thank all our partners, the ESARDA, the INMM, the IAEA, and you, Willem, the Joint Research Center, for always hosting this event and working with us. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Massimo, for this comprehensive speech, and especially starting by putting it into perspective of the European Commission policy, so the von der Leyen agenda, and also referring to the 55 Fit for 55 package, so that the messages you gave there, I think, were very consistent with what we heard from the previous plenary speaker, Mrs. Hruby, but also from Rafael Grossi when he said that it's essential to not have an empty seat in the discussions on COP26. So he was very vocal about that, and I'm very pleased to see that from the European Union side, we're basically fully following this up. Now, to put you in a question, let's say, that is direct relevance for our INMM and ESARDA crowd, is to see where, in fact, these 2 organizations can best help Euratom and your organization. And I want to put that into perspective of your, in fact, mainly professional experience in the area of safety also, because we have heard about security and safeguards already a lot so far in the speeches, and we will cover that in detail in this week's meeting. But there is also potential synergies and interactions with the safety area. So I wanted to check with you whether you could say a few words where you see the benefit that the safeguards and security community perhaps not works in isolation too much, but connects also to the safety community. With due caution, there might also be caveats to be put and attention to be paid not to put at risk one or the other approach. But that's an issue I wanted to have your opinion on and recommendations, whether you think from the INMM ESARDA side, we should occasionally also reach out to the safety crowd and seek for synergies and bridges there. So what's your opinion on that? Thank you, Massimo.
Thank you, Willem. This is a very good question, and it is, of course, something which has been debated a lot over the years. I think that Well, we have a number of issues in Europe. I put it from the European perspective first of all, yeah. And one of the issues is that when you look at the type of authorities that we have in the member states, we have certain authorities which handle both safety and security, and this makes them, how can I say, seamless in the way that they look at the issues. And we have others which are more concentrated on safety, or others which are fully on security. On the side of the Commission, the issue of security is also very touchy, because we do not have any specific mentioning in the Euratom Treaty about security. So while there is lots of practical work that goes on through projects and research projects and collaboration of member states on security, it becomes very difficult when it comes to legislative type measures, for example, because this touches into different type of responsibilities of member states. So I think that when you look at it at the research and at the project stage, it is very important that the two communities, you know, the security and the safety community, actually keep talking to each other and identify areas where there are potential synergies and potential boundaries or interfaces even that have to be better defined. If I may add one thing to maybe better answer your question, what I have tried to explain in these words came out fully during the stress test phase in 2011-2012, when there was lots of discussion as to whether stress tests should actually concern only the safety of nuclear power plants, or should actually extend to security issues like the airplane crash comes to my mind, because it was one of the things that was most debated those days. And one interesting way that we found to look at it is that from the safety point of view, we looked at what kind of consequences airplane crashes could have on safety systems of nuclear installations, but we never went into, let me say, discussing what could be the reasons, the causes, and so on and so forth. So basically, we looked at impact and what would derive from there.
Okay, thank you very much, Massimo. Then I'll hand over to the co-moderator. So for people who came in late, Deb Grascio is the Associate Laboratory Director at PNNL, and she was helping out to look at the Q&A questions. So Deb, if you have some questions from the chat.
Thank you, Willem. Yes, sir. Some of the 55 issues reflect land use and forestry considerations. How does this affect the deployment of wind and solar, which are very land use intensive? And as well as how is intermittency addressed in the deployment scenario for the wind and solar?
Well, I think without going into the details, I think that there is a very clear European effort to deploy indeed wind and solar as much as possible. But let me say, having a look also of how they integrate with each other. The flows of the electricity are also such that you know, let me say, when there is wind in certain parts of Europe, there is no sun over there, and there is the sun in the south, and vice versa. So this is one of the key issues that will need to be solved, and this is solved through the market integration strategy that we have in place. As I said, also you have to keep in mind that the balancing of the European grid and the way that the member states work together in this is not something which is, how can I say, left to be random. Our transmission system operators that manage the high voltage grid, they work together in all these to ensure that the grid is consistently managed. It is true as well that if you want to deploy on land lots of solar and wind, there will be some issues of capacity, and this is why also the EU published the offshore strategy recently to improve the contribution of offshore wind into the energy mix. I hope I have more or less answered.
Thank you.
Okay,
You.
then, yeah, thank you, Deb. There was another question in the chat, which is related to what you mentioned before already, Massimo, in terms of new installations, challenges for safeguarding, especially new facilities. The question was specifically on SMR, or small modular reactors, but you mentioned yourself also the encapsulation plant. Final disposal is behind the door to be taken into operation. So I was going to make the question a little bit more general and ask you, seeing these challenges for the new installations and facilities, what would be your advice for the INMM and the ESARDA crowd to focus on as key R&D topics in the next 5 years that would be of most value, let's say, to have results to be used by your organization? So what would be the recommendations that you would give us to focus our R&D on seeing these challenges that are upcoming?
I thank you very much for this question. I think that, you see, what we are looking at here, if you look at the overall strategy which is being put forward by Europe, is a strategy that says we are -20 now as far as CO2 with respect to 1990, and we are going to -55 by 2030. This is the ambition. So if you want to reach this ambition, you need to deploy things fast, and you need to deploy them now. So if you want to use nuclear energy into all this, and if you want to use SMRs, you are not going to come after 2030 with this type of technologies. So the question is urgent. So you need to be able to put these machines in operation, and it's not only electricity, it is also heat generation, it is industrial uses and so on, for which people have a clear interest upon. So my recommendation, to be crystal clear, is to focus on measures and on things that can be implemented between now and 2030, so as to make as much as possible all this technology viable for deployment and use.
Okay, that's very clear. Thank you for that. And I definitely also count on our industry partners in both organizations to support this. They have this drive towards implementable solutions. So not only the research community, that might take longer, but also the industry partners can help there. I think Deb has another question from the chat, right?
Yes, thank you, Willem. So following on from that answer there, can you elaborate further on the concept safeguards by design, with some concrete examples being considered in the EU and how this operates in the cooperation with the IAEA? Is it fair to say that safeguards by design will be of particular relevance for the new fleet of reactors like SMRs?
Well, let me say, first of all, that we very much hope so, but I think that what I can say is that there are a number of specific facilities, and there is one which is coming to my mind, which is Recumo, where there has been lots of discussion about the implementation of safeguards by design in order to ensure that, let me say, the final object is actually safeguardable altogether. So, and this is, I would say, also particularly important for facilities that have also an international dimension, like the one that I have mentioned, because indeed this provides guarantees to all the partners involved that the safeguards can actually be carried out. So, in this sense, I think that it is particularly important that there is a full awareness of the fact that this is something that needs to be there. It's a little bit, if I can just step aside from your question, but it is a little bit like embedding the commissioning into the design of new facilities. One of the main difficulties that we have nowadays for the commissioning is the fact that we have facilities for which we don't have a full radiological characterization, or facilities which were not built to be dismantled effectively. And so we need to change completely this philosophy and have them actually done in such a way that they can be properly handled. And the same goes for safeguards.
Okay, thank you again, Massimo, for answering all these questions. We've used up our time very fully, I think, and it was a very good overview of the both political priorities, but also the technical support that you would require. So I'd like to thank you once more for that. I thank Deb for helping out in the co-moderation. And if there are any closing remarks or some small advice you might still want to give to our public, then I pass the floor to you once more for the closing, if you like.
No, Willem, thank you very much. I really appreciated your invitation. It was very enriching. I listened very carefully to the other speaker as well. So I think it was very good. And with this, I would leave you. Thank you very much again. Thank you.
Okay, excellent. Thank you once more, Massimo. And then it's a pleasure to pass the floor again to both Susan and Julie for some closing remarks on this plenary session of the first day of the conference.
Thank you, Willem. And thank you to our speakers, Jill Hruby and Massimo Garribba, and our two moderators, Deb Gracio and Willem Janssens. Thank you very much for your contributions to our meeting. This has really been a tremendous day so far, full of interesting presentations from our distinguished guest speakers. Just listening to the discussions, I came up with a number of themes. You might think that we coordinated these presentations, but they had so much overlap, really with no prompting. I made a list: climate change, advanced reactors, advanced technology, pride in the relationships with INMM and ESARDA, diversity and workforce development, medical uses, and cost effectiveness. All these things I think were raised at least by two of the three of them, but I think maybe all of them. I'm particularly interested in just bringing attention to the question that was posed to the administrator about the workforce. The question was about workforce, and it's a good introduction to our closing session that will address issues related to capacity building and workforce development. That session will be on September 1st, the closing plenary. And I hope that you'll all think about this issue in advance so that you can contribute to the discussion. So we had three great speakers already, beginning with Director General Rafael Grossi, continuing with Jill Hruby, and then ending with Massimo Garribba. I hope you'll attend the awards and recognition ceremony that comes up immediately following this session, and join Julie and me at the President's reception following that. For INMM members and others who are interested, the INMM annual business meeting will be held tomorrow after the end of the sessions. As you can imagine, it takes a lot of people to plan for and execute a meeting of this size. It's impossible to mention everyone, but I just like to recognize Carrie Matthews, Chair of the Technical Program Committee, for her many hours of work in creating the technical program that is being presented over the next week and a half. I also want to recognize Valeria Lazova, who is a new INMM member. She was really instrumental in helping us pull together the plenary speakers and preparing the invitations for them. And so I want to thank Valeria. And also it's a good opportunity to introduce our headquarters staff and thank them. Our executive director is Liz Franks. Our meeting team is composed of Sarah Wiltshire, Beth Hogan, and Ryan McGlashan. And our membership director is Deanna Bright. And then all of the people from ESARDA who helped the INMM bring this all together. So now I want to give Julie a chance to make some remarks to close out our plenary session. Julie?
Thank you, Susan. I will be short because we are running out of time, and I think you wrap up exactly what I was about to say. I think we have great speakers. Thank you, Massimo. Thank you to Administrator Hruby. It was really interesting listening to them both. As you said, there are so many topics that we can address during this meeting. So I think it will be a great opportunity, especially on emerging technologies. I remember Jill Hruby saying that it could enhance our missions, but also introduce new risks. So definitely this is a job for the INMM and ESARDA to work on how to use those technologies in the right way. And also on the presentation from Massimo Garribba, I noticed so many big opportunities for research and innovation on different fields like Samira for the medical side, the Euratom research program, and also the ITER project on fusion, which is important, especially for France. I like also to recognize our two co-moderators. Thank you, Deb, and thank you, Willem. And with this, I will end this session. I think we have a very good exchange, and I invite you to join the award ceremony and then the welcome, the reception of the president, sorry.